Hey, survivors, welcome to another episode of How to Survive Survival. I'm really looking forward to this conversation that I am going to share with you in just a minute. I am speaking with a really good friend of mine, Sam Goodwin. We are both members of a very small club, the former hostage slash wrongfully detained club, and we met each other well, a few years ago through our work with Hostage US, which is based a nonprofit based here in DC that supports hostages and their families as they're being held and detainees, and then supports them when they reintegrate and they come home. And so he's been very active supporting Hostage US's work, and he's just a really interesting guy. He's been to all 193 countries, and as you can imagine, he's had all kinds of adventures. We're going to talk about one little detour that he took. You might recognize him from one of my survivor spotlights in How to Survive Survival. And if you don't, then I hope you'll stay on for this conversation because he's just really inspirational. He's really smart and he's very cool and he's doing some amazing things. And I know you're going to be encouraged and inspired to think about survivorship in a different way. Hi, I'm Jessica Buchanan, and this is How to Survive Survival. This podcast is about what comes after the crisis, after the moment that changes everything, after you've done what you had to do just to get through. Each week, I sit down with people who faced hardship and made a deliberate choice about what to do with it. People who've turned pain into purpose, who found a way to make meaningful contribution because of what they survived, not in spite of it. Because survival isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of who you become next. Welcome to the show. Well, Sam, welcome to How to Survive Survival.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jess.
Your story is, I'm sure you hear this all the time. It's wild. And it actually hasn't really been that long. I was checking the date on, like from your book, and like before I muddle it all up, let me just hand the mic over to you. Why don't you just give us a quick snapshot of what you were doing in Syria in 2019?
Yeah, thanks. And I'd be remiss if I didn't start by saying I feel like I should be interviewing you because you know about surviving survival as well as anybody. But I just appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Oh,
So in a nutshell, I spent the first 7 years of my professional career living and working overseas. I was in Singapore
mhm,
for 6 years, in Dubai for a year, and working for a tech startup business and a regional NGO
mhm.
that was doing development work primarily around Southeast Asia. Throughout the time, I traveled as much as I could. You know, I was in my early 20s in the heart of Southeast Asia. I've had a little bit of flexibility, my work schedule, and at the world's best airport in my backyard. And I took advantage of the opportunity to explore as much of the region and beyond as possible. And some of that was for work, and a lot of it was for pleasure and just this unrelenting curiosity about experiencing new places and meeting new people. In the spring of 2018, I realized that I had traveled to about 180 countries. I traveled to about 180 countries in the world, and I was towards the end of this journey of attempting to travel to all of them. And that was when I went to Syria in May of 2019. And I was about 2 hours after arriving, I was walking through a roundabout on the way to meet up with my guide, and when all of a sudden a black pickup truck abruptly pulled up next to me. Two armed men jumped out of the back seat and instructed me to get inside. And thankfully, they weren't violent, but I didn't have a choice. And I was scared, confused. I had no information or anyone to help. I was desperately trying to understand what was happening. And these men were loyal to the then Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, and told me that they were skeptical about my travel history and my travel motives. And as we sped down back alleys of the city, the officers in the vehicle accused me of espionage, of being an American spy, and collaborating with terrorists. And they went on to hold me for they held me for 9 weeks in some pretty uncomfortable situations. And I can talk as much or as little about that as you're interested in. But thank God, thanks to a long list of people who worked tirelessly, on July 26th, I was released actually through the assistance of a lot of people, but the
Mhm.
Lebanese, and was able to come home that way, and just so grateful, put so much into perspective.
Wow. 7 weeks in a Syrian prison.
9 weeks.
9 weeks.
Don't
Sorry.
forget, I counted them all,
Okay. Yeah. No,
as you
sorry.
know.
Sorry. I thought you said 7.
No,
Yeah.
no,
That's how I feel when people are like 90 days. I'm like, nope, nope,
nope.
93.
Yeah, exactly,
So
exactly.
thank you for the correction. Um, what what were you thinking about? I know, like, from my own personal experience, you think about all the things, right? You think about what
Mhm.
you could have done differently. You think about the past. You review the past.
Mhm.
Um, I'm guessing that you're thinking about the future and what you're going to do when you get out and how are you going to handle what life's going to be like when you get out. What was your thought process around that?
Yeah, so in the cell, I spent 27 days in solitary confinement, and in that cell, I did a range of things to pass time, which isn't exactly what you're asking about, but I'll start with that. And
Yeah.
and I would, I had a routine, and interestingly, just a very quick side note, actually, about 6 months after I was released, I was invited by the U.S. SEER team to visit Fort Bragg, and to give a
Hmm.
presentation to about 75 Green Berets about these are it's serious survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, and these are members of our military who are put on missions where they're at risk of being captured,
Yep.
and what they wanted to know was your question, basically, what did I do in that situation without any training? And it turned out
Yeah.
that several of the things I did were actually things that they teach in their course, and one of those was establish a routine, and so
Yes.
I would pretend the cell was full of people and tell stories. I would
Hmm.
sing songs.
Hmm.
I would remember hockey games that I played in my life from start to finish, everything I could remember. I had time to pray. I had time to
Hmm.
exercise. I had time to eat. And this routine became so important to emotional
Hmm.
and psychological health. And it turns out, as I mentioned, that's something that they teach in their routine and in their program. And I think there's a lesson in there for all of us, because how much more productive are we in our life when we
Right.
have a routine and we have a little
Yes.
bit of structure? And the same thing was the case in solitary confinement in a Middle Eastern prison cell. So
Yeah.
I did those things to pass the time. Um, at the same time, I found strength, in several ways. I leaned on a belief that I had a purpose in life and a desire to see family and friends again.
Hmm.
I was also feeling, kind of to your point, like this incredible guilt over the combination of worry and sadness that I knew my family must have been
Yes.
experiencing. I leaned on, perspectives that I developed from traveling to different corners of the world, which provoked gratitude for just the basic food and water I was being given. And I leaned on skills and traits I developed from being a competitive athlete, the mental
Hmm.
toughness, critical thinking, resilience. How often have we had a boss or a coach tell us, control what you can control? And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
it was kind of all of these things collectively, and really just pulling strength from all different chapters of my life.
So I want to like tap into that statement that you just made, using the idea or the belief that you had a purpose in life as something that sounds like it brought you hope and it was something that got you from, day to day. How has that evolved or shifted in the aftermath of solitary confinement?
Since being home, I don't feel so much survivor's guilt as I feel what I characterize as survivor's responsibility. And
Yes.
some of this, I think, is rooted in a spiritual standpoint. Like,
Hmm.
I mentioned all those things that were important to me in that cell. I don't know if any of it was as important as my Catholic faith, and sort of kind of viewing the
Hmm.
world through a spiritual lens personally. But um, what I learned quickly was that a lot of situations like mine and like ours don't end the way that ours did. They end very differently. And
Yes.
I started to just realize that I had been given something that was significant and unusual. And I felt this responsibility to do something good with it. And interestingly, I didn't, I'm so grateful to say when I came home, I was surrounded by just this overwhelmingly purposeful support system, my family, friends. And so I actually felt emotionally and psychologically and physically relatively healthy. But what I
Mhm.
actually was struggling with or dealing with the most was, how do I use this for good?
Mhm.
Because, the cliche, to whom much is given, much is
It's
expected.
just, yeah.
And so I was actually dealing with that more than kind of any health issues. And that's still kind of where my mind is today. I just
Mhm.
feel like I've been given something unusual and important. And so I'm committed to doing the best I can to try and use it for good today. And it's all kind of rooted in this responsibility.
Mhm. Do you find that that very much resonates with me? I mean,
Totally.
you and I have had so many conversations offline about this, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so we're on the same page
Hmm.
when it comes to that belief and the efforts and the work that we're putting out into the world. Um, I guess my question is, in your opinion, what is it that differentiates people like us? For those who are listening, I'm not trying to make it an either or an us or them, or
Mm.
but what I'm really like fascinated slash obsessed with is this, like, what is that thing or that thread that, for me, it feels like a compulsion almost, of like, I have to do something meaningful. I have to make sure that the work I'm putting out into the world now, the survivor's responsibility, is purposeful.
Mhm.
What do you think it is for people who maybe don't feel that?
I think that we don't. I don't think a lot of us know how strong we are until strength is our only option.
Oh,
And people say to me, I'm sure they say to you, like, "Oh, I never could have done it," or I would
yeah,
have fallen apart. And it's like, well, you get to a point where strength and survival is your only option.
yeah.
And I think we are, we're stronger than we think when we're pushed to that point. And hope isn't always easy, but it is always available. And
Hmm.
that's something that, I discovered in that situation and something that I kind of lean on today as well.
Hmm. So, what did you learn about yourself other than your own strength? And how do you how do you use that today? How do you tap into that today?
I think we're kind of to my last one. I think we're all stronger and more resilient than we can imagine. And uncertain times are exactly what we need in order to grow. And
Hmm.
I actually just on Sunday, this just a few days ago, I did a triathlon in Florida, and I pulled up to the to the event, and a news reporter just happened to park next to me. And so she asked if she could interview me, and I said, okay, sure. And she said, asked a few things and said, so why are you doing a triathlon? And I said, well, this is my first one. It's a hobby. And I think that basically I said, the more that we sweat in peace, the less we bleed in war. And the point for me around that is that the more that we challenge ourselves on our own terms to do things that are uncomfortable, the better prepared we are to take on challenges when they happen outside of our control. And so going back to this, I think that we're all stronger and more resilient than we can imagine. In these uncertain times, these challenges are exactly what we need, in order to grow. And I try to look at things through that lens today and share that with others. My primary theme today when I speak is uncertainty. And, I was
Hmm.
pushed to this point of overwhelming uncertainty, truly life or death. But through that, I learned some things, that I've talked about, some things that helped me and some things that I think can help all of us when we're facing our own forms of uncertainty. And I won't say that, being held hostage is the same type of uncertainty as, selling life insurance. But what I will say is that the same recipe of responses is relevant
Yeah,
to addressing those challenges.
100%. I mean, in a very like mundane everyday basic analogy, I'm thinking about the fact that like I my goal for 2026 is to really prioritize my health. I am a
Yep. And
woman of a
adventure.
certain age, and so things are starting to get real.
Mm.
And it's like I need to think about what's gonna happen 20 years ahead of now. So now I exercise
Mm.
not to get smaller or change aesthetics. It's about making sure my bones are as strong as they can be so that if
Mhm.
I slip trying to, I don't know, open the dishwasher, I don't break a hip and die a year later or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, again, very basic, very mundane, but
No,
it's
it's
like,
important. And you can hang out with your kids and lift them
yeah,
up and do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
all of the things, right? So, but, um, what were some of the hardest parts about coming back, about surviving survival? Like, does that resonate
Mhm.
with you? I mean, it's entirely possible that you came back and you were like, I'm free. This is awesome. Woo!
Definitely wasn't that. Certainly working through things. There's quite a bit. I think, it's interesting. There are a lot of people who hear the story, who hear my story and say, this guy is an idiot and, never should
Oh,
have,
don't you love that?
right, like never should have tried to go to every country, never
Yeah.
should have been in Syria in the first place, right? And there
How do,
are
wait,
a
how
lot
do
of,
you handle that, by the way? Because I come up
well,
against that all the time and I never know what to say.
yeah, so I'll mention so there are a lot of other people who hear story and say, "Oh, this guy is a hero for surviving."
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and the truth is, I'm neither of those extremes. I
Hmm.
became part of this extraordinary circumstance and just did my best to embrace and manage it. And
Hmm.
what I've learned to be true is that we can't always choose the exact path that we take in life, but we can always choose. We can always choose the manner in which we walk it. And
Yeah.
and when it comes to kind of your question, the way that I deal with the booing and the negativity is to also not get caught up in the cheering and the praise. And so I
Yeah.
stay in this kind of cocoon in my head right in the middle. And that's kind of how I
Hmm.
take on some of that some of that feedback.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. Uh, then what was surviving survival like for you? What were some of the hardest parts?
I think it was kind of what I was saying, kind of trying to navigate how to use it for good. I came home and a few months later was COVID and it was like
Ah,
isolation
yeah, that's
2.0.
true. Yeah.
And
Did that trigger some like PTSD and
well, a little bit because there were, like CNN and Fox, like they're having these former hostages and prisoners of war on their program talking about how to deal with isolation and captivity and loneliness and these
yeah.
things. And so it was kind of like reliving some things. But I I just kind of took one step at a time. I mean, I went back to school. I started
Mhm.
writing things down from what I'd experienced, and eventually published a book a couple years
Mhm.
later, and trying to can't quite keep up with impossible odds, but I'm doing my best. But I think for me, as far as surviving survival and PTSD, for personally, there were really two things that were most important. One was being surrounded by just a really purposeful support system. So friends,
Okay.
family. I did an interview with USA Today a few weeks ago when the Gaza hostages were released, and it kind of gave a few pieces of advice. And one of them was to be really intentional about the people that you surround yourself with
Yes.
in particularly those first few like days and weeks.
Yeah.
The second thing for me was my faith. I mean, I view the world through a spiritual lens. I found so much
Mhm.
strength in prayer, and
Mhm.
what I learned in solitary confinement is that we're never less alone than when we're totally alone with God. And
Mm.
I felt this closeness to God that I had never experienced before. And actually, in the wake of this, I will admit I found it challenging to replicate that today, even though
Yes.
I feel like I've experienced something really special. And I think
Mhm.
I think the reason for that is because all of the distractions in our
Mhm.
life and everything we have going on. And so I often try to challenge people to think about a time in their life when they felt strongest in their faith, and what would it take to replicate that
Mhm.
today. But I would say family and faith were probably where I found the most strength and how I was able to best combat the PTSD, but still, working on all of that today, still dealing with, tons of negative comments and all of those
Mhm.
things. Um, so it's just kind of an ongoing project.
Right. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't ever end. It never
Oh.
goes away.
And
So,
also, like, it's also a challenge to kind of like be defined by this as well. And again, we could have a whole other episode about this. Like,
Mhm.
you know, uh, like Syria doesn't define me, but it has become a part of who I am. And
Mhm.
and a lot of people said that my life was over, but um, in truth, it was just getting going.
Mm. So how did you keep it from defining you? Because I feel like very defined.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I have. I mean, I
Mm.
think there are some there probably, there are some people who I know would be like Sam Goodwin. Oh, he's a hockey player, or, oh, he's the guy who went to every country, or he's
That's how I see you. Is
yeah,
like
thanks. I appreciate
Sam
it.
is my friend who is just like this intrepid adventurer. And oh,
I mean,
he also spent some time in a Syrian prison, but like I think of you like you just got back from Uganda and trekking with gorillas. Like that's how
I
I
mean,
see.
I think of you the same. I'm like, you're an incredible mother and you're a
Mhm.
humanitarian worker and you're moving to Abu Dhabi. Like it's like but I think like from the outside, it's hard
Yeah.
to kind of know a lot of these things. So it's it's also tough because I'm grateful to say I speak full time today, so I'm talking
Mhm.
about this story,
Yeah.
and the messages around it all the time. So that's how people come to know me. But I think it's it just kind of goes to the point of like, I don't people on the outside, they don't really know what's going on. And so
Yeah.
I know what's actually going on with me. I know what I'm interested in, what I'm doing, and that's kind of what I can control. And so I just it's tough because like I often say that some of the best advice I've ever been given is that the quickest way to be unhappy is to live our lives and make decisions based on other people's judgments. Essentially,
Yes.
don't care what other people think. At the same time, like I'm kind of working in a space where I need people to to like what I have to say. So
Right. I get
it's
that.
a balance, right? Like it's a balance there, but I think what I'm saying is like I don't I don't really care
Mhm.
what people think because I know, the truth and I know
You
what
know your
I'm
truth.
doing.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of a balance. And it's not always easy. It's not like it's easy to just, oh, I don't care what other people think.
Right.
It's always kind of an ongoing battle.
Yeah, I hear you. So
Yeah.
I guess there are a lot of people out there who've been through extraordinary circumstances, have survived extraordinary things, and they take it to their grave because they choose not to talk about it in the bigger
Yeah.
context, like you and I have chosen to. I have given this a lot of thought about why, and you and I have had lots of conversations offline about this.
Mhm.
But recently, I've been thinking a lot about, to your point about survivor responsibility, and I think there's a large part of me that felt the need to speak more openly about what I'd been through and, being rescued by SEAL Team 6, because I felt like as an American, I felt responsible for carrying that message, right?
Mhm.
Of what the military had done for me and my family. In not in a begrudging way. I've always been very happy to do it. But I guess in some ways I maybe didn't feel like I had much of a choice. So like
Mhm.
from like how have you like grappled with that decision to be more public about it?
Yeah. So when I came home and was trying to navigate things and trying to figure out what steps to take, um, I felt the responsibility, but I had no idea what to do. I had no idea how to
You
give a
felt a
presentation.
responsibility to talk
I
about
felt
it
the
or
responsibility to do something good with it, but I
something
had
good?
no
Okay.
idea what to do. Like I didn't
Okay,
know
what that
how
good
to
was.
Right. And people were saying to me, "Oh my gosh, you have to write a book." And "Oh my gosh, you have to, you gotta talk about this and you can, whatever." And so I felt this responsibility, but I had no idea what to do. And it's, I guess, like as I've gotten got a little bit older, I don't know. I mean, I'm 37, but as I've gotten a little bit older,
Oh,
I've kind
you're
of
a
realized that,
baby.
yeah, thanks. I guess I've kind of realized that there's so many people who are just like fake it till you make it. They're just making it up. Like they don't know either. And I think a lot in anything that they're doing, and a lot of times that people like there are people who are doing exactly. I realize there are people who are doing exactly what I wanted to do, who, I like I knew more or I was more capable or but they were just willing to take the risk and go
Hmm.
and do it.
Hmm.
And so it kind of came down to just like trying. And I realized, I was like 30 when I came home. Like I could have, like, I could do nothing right for 10 years and still be young. So
Hmm.
why wouldn't I just go and try? And
Hmm.
so it was kind of like this calculated risk, but I feared failure a lot less than I feared regret.
Mm.
And so I had to just try and figure it out. So, I mean, my first presentation, I stood up in front of a few people and looked at my iPad, thought I did a pretty horrible job. And afterwards, the lady said, "Hey, this was great. Like, would you come and talk to, you know, like my Rotary group or something?" And then it just kind of
Hmm.
went from there. But I think it was about kind of like this curiosity and taking risks and it's cliche, but be like the turtle. The turtle doesn't move forward unless it sticks its neck out. And that was kind
Hmm.
of how I think kind of the entrepreneur in me from my time before all this also kicked in a little bit as
Well,
well.
it sounds to me too like that's part of your like own if I and I, this is the language I use, so maybe it doesn't resonate necessarily with you, but like seems like a reclamation of who of your spirit, right? Of who you've always been. I think it's amazing that this detainee, this hostage experience did not like beat that out of you, that you could still access that independent spirit, that need to try, because I think after going through something such an ordeal, it would be very easy to be the turtle, to just keep your head in your shell, because the world is a scary place now.
It took some time and it wasn't, it was a team effort. It wasn't just me. I was,
Yeah.
surrounded by good people.
Yeah.
But it took, it took some time to get to that point.
And was it worth it?
I mean, I kind of, again, going back to like the spiritual standpoint, like I feel today like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's a really, really incredible feeling. I'm so grateful for that. Now, I don't know what kind of the future looks like and how
Yeah.
long this will, I'm sure things will evolve, but that's how I feel right now. And,
Yeah.
and it just, yeah, feel really fortunate.
That's amazing.
But also, a quick anecdote on that. So I, I'll never forget. I share this story with like parents a lot of times, and it's not not that I'm an expert on that at all. I don't really know anything. But um, when I finished college and had the opportunity to move to Singapore, I had this opportunity as for an internship, and I remember it getting it. I was 23 and thinking like, this is crazy. Like, I don't even know why I pursue this. Like, I would never move to Asia, right? Like, this is nuts. And I remember my dad said to me, he said, "Sam, just go, and the worst thing that happens is you come home, and you
Yeah.
can always do that." And I
Yeah.
think like so when you say maybe it was my like a reclamation of my spirit or whatever, I attribute so much of that to my parents for kind of
Hmm.
providing that perspective to me
Yes.
and that opportunity. And then I also think that like in our early 20s, oftentimes like society tells us like go and get a job and be stable and but and like I think that in our 20s we should be going out and pursuing every possible dream that
Yeah.
we have, living with four roommates and making mistakes and learning as much as we
Yeah.
possibly can, because that's the, that's the time to do that. And it was all kind of linked together a little bit, but that
Yeah.
anecdote with my dad kind of really sticks with me. And I think kind of a lot, so much of that was like the foundation of my adulthood and
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure it's the foundation of how you were raised, right? And that is also probably what has continued to strengthen that resilience that has gotten you through some of the hardest moments of your life.
I think it's all linked. I feel really fortunate. I'm the oldest of five, so I have four
Yeah.
siblings as well, and we're all really close.
Yeah.
And so,
Incredible. And I'm sure there are some parents out there listening to this who are like, yeah, okay, the worst thing that can happen is you can get picked up,
totally,
you're,
yeah, go and take some risks, and you end up
get,
as a hostage, right? Exactly.
get, and then
Yeah.
people ask me about that all the time. Like, what am I going to say when my kids want their passport and they want to go off and, and
To
I'm like,
Somalia,
yeah, I'm like, who, uh, I'm
right?
just gonna pray. Thank God I am a spiritual person and a person of faith because I don't know how people get through life without it.
Yeah, totally, totally. And people will ask, like, I get a question in Q&As all the time from parents, like, so we have kids who want to travel. What's your
Yeah,
advice to them,
yeah,
right? And I always
yeah.
say, just go,
Just
go,
go.
absolutely go. I mean, travel's the best education I've ever had.
Yes,
And at the same time, safety's always the top priority, as it
100%.
should be.
Yeah,
And so research, but go, absolutely, go and that's always kind of my recommendation, despite, kind of what happened.
what could, yeah, same. It took me a while to get there, but I'm
Right.
I'm
Say,
glad
yeah.
to have, yeah, been able to reclaim that. And I've
Yeah.
had two conversations with young people. One was my neighbor who came over the other day. We were having a fire pit with the neighbors, and he like stayed behind and was wanted to talk to me and Eric about how do you move abroad? Like, how do you
Yeah.
do that? He's like, I don't know anybody else who's done that. Like, how, like, and I was like, go see the world. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And then we're
Right.
selling everything because we're moving to Abu Dhabi. So this young
Yeah.
girl came and bought like camping equipment and a backpack and a tent. And I was like, oh, I took this backpack the first time I went backpacking in East Africa. And I was, blah, blah, blah. And she was just like, her eyes were like this. And I was like, you're so young. You have your whole life ahead of, I mean, she was probably like, okay, crazy lady. But I was also just like, you have the whole world, like, it's your oyster. Like, it's such a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And people are so incredible. And for as many bad people, and I'm sure you feel this way, as many bad people as we've encountered, there are tenfold amazing
Oh my
people,
gosh. The,
right?
I mean, I've been to every country in the world. The overwhelming majority of people in the world are well-intentioned, proud of their
Yeah.
country, happy to help others.
Yeah.
And it's often just a small subset of people who give a much larger group a bad rep. I
100%.
mean, one of the most important things I mean, travel's taught me so many things, but never judge people by the actions of their government.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I've also learned
Or
that
the
people
or the
who
bad people in their country.
or the bad people in their country.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've also learned that people who have the least often give the most. Something that
Mhm.
I found to be true in all corners of the world. So these are just
Mhm.
like things that I've learned through travel that, take with me forever.
I love that. So, what would you say as we conclude to someone who might be listening to this? I hope someone listens to this
Mhm.
and their
They
world has
will.
been turned upside down by some sort of traumatic event. And they've gotten through the crisis of it, but they're standing on a precipice, really. They're on that edge of like looking behind at the ash and they're looking forward at the future and they're asking, now what? What do I have a purpose? Is what I've been through linked to my like, because I know that was the hardest thing for me to figure out too. Oh my gosh, I just wanted somebody to tell me what to do and I would do it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not easy, but what is one piece of advice you would give them?
So, but I mentioned this a few minutes ago, but I think we're all stronger, more resilient than we can imagine, and uncertain times are exactly what we need in order to grow. In addition to that, though, I would ask, what what do you want to do before you die? and think about that perspective. What do you want to do before you die, and why wouldn't you try and do that?
Mm. Mm. Because if we know anything, it's that time is short, right?
Oh
And
my
it is
gosh. Yeah.
uncertain and unpredictable.
Yeah,
Have
absolutely.
have you gotten to do everything?
I don't know about it. So I just Natasha and I got married a few months ago in
What?
November. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So I would say having a family
Yeah.
is probably the most important thing that I'm focused on.
Oh, that's so lovely. How
Yeah,
beautiful.
thanks.
Sam, you are really just such a gift.
No,
I,
thanks. I'm trying to keep up with you, truly. I no like and actually I'm just going to take this opportunity to say so I came home in 2019, I was several years after you and um when I came home, I talked about trying to what steps would take trying to in
Mhm,
this kind of mess and COVID and all of that. And uh there were people ahead of me who paved the way,
mhm,
and you were one of them when it came
mhm,
to writing a book. You'd helped me so much through that, introduced me to lots of people. I'm trying to create, I'm, turning a mess into a message, and I watched
mhm,
so many of your clips on how you did that,
mhm.
and so you truly one of the, I mean, getting involved with Hostage US and all those things.
Yeah.
You were one of the pioneers, and I would not. So you can say that I'm a gift or whatever, but I certainly wouldn't be what I am today without you paving the way. So just so grateful for that.
Oh, I received that with an open heart, Sam. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you.
course, of
Well,
course.
so the fact that you're a world traveler makes me think that maybe, hopefully, I'll see you either in Abu Dhabi or Sweden, probably before I see you in the States again. But if if not in
It's
person,
funny how it works like that
no,
sometimes.
right? It is.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I'm just so grateful for the message that you shared with us today, for your time. Um, I can't wait for people to hear your story, read your book. What's the best way for people to connect with you if they'd like to?
Thanks. Yeah, so I wrote a book. It's called Saving Sam. You can get it online everywhere books are sold. And just I'm on social media. Feel
Yeah.
free to reach out, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever your preferred method is. And I'd be happy to hear from you. If anybody's listening and wants to reach out, please don't hesitate. That's why we do these things.
Yeah. Thanks,
So,
Sam, for your
yeah, of
generosity.
course. Thanks for helping to spread the word, and congratulations on all of your success.
Thank you for listening to How to Survive Survival. If you found something meaningful here, I'd ask for you to subscribe, share, or leave a 5-star review so these conversations can reach others who are walking their own road back. You can learn more about me and my work at www.jessbuchanan.com. And until next time, remember, what happened to you is only part of the story. What you choose to do with it is where your power lives.